The night shift lights in my office do not pretend to be warm. The ceiling panels hum. The thermostat reads 69. I trust the number because I installed the thermostat myself after the building overcooled the suite last winter. I lock the hall door, check the waiting room, and return to my desk with the last chart of the day. The name on the intake form is printed in a neat hand. Ellis Vale. The referral line is blank. The insurance field says self-pay. The appointment note that my receptionist left on the schedule reads only 2 words. Urgent consult. I should have pushed this to tomorrow. I run 2 minutes behind, and I still need to sign 3 prescriptions. I set a cup of tea on the coaster and line up a fresh legal pad. I put the same pen I always use on top of the pad, so I do not lose it again under the casebooks. I send a quick text to my wife that I will be home after 9. Her reply is a thumbs up and a purple heart. I turn the office phone to silent and double-check the panic button under the lip of the desk, out of habit. The light is steady. The battery is good. The waiting room chair across from the aquarium is not empty anymore. He sits there without moving his hands and watches the slow turn of the water filter wheel. His coat is black wool without lint. His shoes are polished. His hair is cut short and combed straight back. The receptionist's desk is empty because Jenna left at 6, but I do not call her name. I step into the doorway and say the same thing I say to every new patient at the first meeting. I tell him that I am Dr. Mason, that my pronouns are he and him, and that he is welcome to call me Daniel if he prefers, although most people do not. He nods once. "Mr. Vale, please come in," I say, and I gesture to the client chair in the office. He stands without a sound from the chair cushion or the coat. He stops a foot from me and offers a hand. The skin is cool and very dry, with no tremor and no squeeze. The contact lasts 1 second. I note these details without judgment, because I have trained myself to do that. He passes me and sits on the client chair. He does not sink into it. His posture is straight, without stiffness. He places his hands on the armrests as if the chair belongs to him. The first minute of any session is an intake of air that has to become words. I set the boundaries. I tell him that our session is confidential with exceptions for immediate risk. I explain the structure and the time frame. I do it in plain language because I prefer simple speech. He nods at each section. He asks no questions. When I finish, I wait. Silence in a first session is a tool. It is also a test. He uses it. When she asked for the name to put on your schedule, I said Ellis Vale, he says. That is the name I used the last time I needed to be taken seriously by a professional. It is not my name. He speaks without effort. The voice does not reach for attention. He speaks English without any accent I can place. I asked for tonight because I keep my appointments. I am here because you asked for me. I do not respond to the claim. I ask, what would you like help with? And I pull the pad closer. He looks at the pad with a small smile that does not reach his eyes. Titles are useful, he says. You prefer titles that set expectations. I read yours. Board certified. Forensic experience. Hospital privileges. You like clean edges. Tonight you will not get clean edges. The title you will use for me is simple. You will call me what I am, because if you use other words for it, you will waste the hour. I am the devil. I have heard many versions of grand identity claims. I do not smile. I do not correct him. My hand moves to write down the statement. I write the words patient states he is the devil, and I stop there. My tea has formed a thin skin on the surface. I lift the cup and set it down. I have done this before with a man who believed he wrote the laws of physics, and with a woman who believed her aunt replaced her with a copy. I ask for data. I ask for the current problem, I ask for risk. What brings you in tonight? I ask. He looks at the analog clock on the bookcase behind me. It ticks. The second hand moves without sound. His gaze sits there for 3 ticks. Retirement planning, he says. Succession, work-life balance. Pick a term and do not make it cute. I am considering a change in function. I want your clinical judgment on whether such a change is feasible, responsible, and safe for the population under my care. He does not laugh at his own words. He does not check whether I laugh. I do not. I keep my voice level and ask, population under your care. All of them, he says. The dead who did not learn what they needed to learn while they were breathing. The ones who arrived with a full set of explanations and none of the work done. The ones who insisted that other people were to blame for every minute of their life, and who still insist on that here. The ones who want a fire because a fire would make sense. I do not give them a fire. I give them what is true. He has rehearsed this speech for a long time. His words carry the dry weight of something he has said to many people. His gaze stays steady. The clock ticks. I check my hands. No tremor, no pen click. I say, tell me what is true. He looks at my diploma. He reads the school. He reads the year. He recites the name of my dissertation advisor. He says my advisor's middle name and his dog's name and the fact that the dog died on a Saturday morning while a kettle cooled on a blue stove. He tells me the color of the tile in the old lab break room and the number of times I left the lab at midnight to jog the corridor so I could manage my thoughts. He states the exact number of minutes I sat in my car outside the hospital the day I signed my first involuntary hold. He says my son's birth weight and the time of day, and the song that played on the car radio when we left the hospital. He tells me the nickname my wife uses for me when she is worried, and the word she avoids when she is angry. These are not guesses. These are facts. I do not hand him that victory. I do not argue. I have met patient families who collect data before a session because they want an advantage. I have met con men who do the same. I have also met men who knew things they had no way to know. The world is dull until it is not. My work does not change because of either case. I do not treat titles, I say. I treat the person who has the title. If you want my judgment on a change in function, answer questions and accept structure. No monologues, no riddles. If you speak plainly, we may get somewhere in an hour. If you do not, we will not. He leans back a half inch. The smile is gone. The posture does not shift further. I press the timer on my watch without looking at it. I always run a quiet timer during sessions to track time without looking at the clock behind the patient. The watch does not buzz. The timer does not start. I press it again. Nothing. I press the panic button under the desk for a quick test, which usually gives a soft click when the relay takes the signal. No click. The analog clock ticks. You locked the outer door, he says. You checked the panic button. You texted your wife. You are a careful man. I chose you because of that. We will not need the button. Nothing in the hall can come in without consent. And you will not consent to it. You will consent to this session because you consent to your role. And that is the only consent that matters now. My mouth is dry. I pick up my water bottle and drink 2 sips. I do not let him see any shake or swallow. I set it down in the same place I always set it. I return to the pad. All right, I say. Tell me what this change in function would entail. He turns his head to the window that looks over the parking lot. The blinds show slivers of the row of lamps and the asphalt stripe lines. A snowflake rides down the glass from top to frame and stops halfway, as if the glass is a stage and it is unsure of the next move. It does not melt. It also does not move again. I watch it for a full breath. The office is not cold. The thermostat still reads 69. My function is to operate a system, he says. The system is a mirror. It does not burn. It does not stab. It does not tear. It reflects. It holds a person in contact with the person he made in the time he had. And it keeps that contact until he decides to stop lying about who did the making. Some accept correction in an afternoon. Some accept it in a century. Time counts differently there. I am not poetic about it. I do not enjoy it. I do not hate it. I maintain it. I am tired of it. That is the problem. My tiredness cannot be allowed to contaminate the system. I want to know whether I can step aside. Who steps in? I ask. I keep my pencil steady. You do not have a candidate yet, he says. That is why I am here. I cannot appoint a successor without agreeing to the rules of the clinic. Consent, evaluation, documentation. I have to let a human clinician lay eyes on the work and attest that it is work, not cruelty. Your signature carries weight. Your habit of accuracy is known. That is why you feel watched when you count breathing in the hallway before you enter the unit on the morning of a commitment hearing. You are watched, not by cameras, by the ledger that runs through all of this. Show me the system, I say. I hear my own voice and it is steady. If you want a clinical opinion, I need more than sentences. Show me. He turns his right hand palm up. The hand is like any hand, with faint lines and a small pale scar at the base of the thumb. The air in the room flattens. Not colder, not warmer. Flatter. The hum of the ceiling changes pitch and stops. The aquarium filter wheel stops. The snowflake on the window remains a white comma. The analog clock's second hand moves to the 12 and stays there. The sound does not cut out. It stops being sound. Silence is not the right word. The word would suggest emptiness. This is not empty. It is complete. The door behind the client chair opens onto a corridor that is not my hallway. My hallway is beige with carpet. This corridor is gray concrete and white light. There is no temperature in it. The light does not shadow the corners. A sign beside the door reads "Intake" in simple black letters. The letters have no font I can name. The layout follows a logic I know from hospitals, courthouses, and data centers. Straight lines, right angles, no decoration. I do not stand at once. I stand when I know I will not fall while I stand. I put my hand on the desk not for support, but to feel the wood under my palm. The wood is still wood. He stands without using the armrests. Do not leave your anchor without picking it up, he says. He gestures to my legal pad. If you bring the pad, you remember your role. You are not a tourist. You are a clinician. That will keep you from doing something dramatic and unhelpful. I pick up the pad and the pen. The weight of both is correct. I tuck my wallet into the inner pocket of my jacket by habit. He watches the gesture and nods once. He steps into the corridor. I follow him. The office door closes behind us without a latch sound. It is not my door anymore. It is a wall. We pass 3 doors labeled orientation, counterfactuals, and consequences. The labels are stark. No icons. The spacing between the letters is exact. The floor does not echo footsteps. I hear nothing except the movement of fabric when I walk. My mouth tastes of paper and dust that has never held mold. He stops at the 4th door. It reads triage. The handle is matte metal. He does not touch it. He looks at me. Remind yourself of the rules, he says. You do not move a patient. You do not restrain a patient. You do not accept a patient's burden as your own. You consult. You observe. You document. You advise. If you try to rescue, you lose the map. If you lose the map, you get added to the head count. He opens the door. The room is a clean auditorium without seats. The floor is flat. The far wall is glass. Behind the glass is a high-walled space like a shipping warehouse. If a warehouse had no forklifts and no dust and no smell of fuel. Lanes run between cubicles made of pale partitions. In each cubicle sits a person in a chair facing a desk. In each cubicle, the other chair across the desk holds a second person, or it does not. A light above each cubicle glows in one of 3 colors. The colors are not colors I know. My eyes can see them and name them only as this, that, and the other. He gestures at a panel embedded in the wall in front of the glass. It is a clipboard without metal or plastic. It is smooth stone. On the stone are names I have not heard, and names I have heard in court. Each name has a file number and a small indicator that pulses softly. When I put my hand near the stone, the list scrolls as if my hand emits a current. I can stop it by tightening my fingers. I do not touch it. I look for an obvious cruelty. None of this is theatrical. No one is screaming. No one is shackled. The people at the desks speak, though I cannot hear words through the glass. Some write, some argue, some stare down into the surface of the desk, with a focus I recognize from a man reading his own chart, while he decides if he wants to live his life the way he has been living it. This is where the first decisions are made, he says. Placement, supervision level, time dilations to match insight, companion assignment. The work is not to punish. The work is to stop the story each person rehearsed for years and make him sit with the truth he avoided. I have built reliable protocols for this. Reliability creates problems. Systems breed routine. Routine breeds blind spots. Blind spots breed harm. I will not pretend we have never done harm. I am asking if the alternative is worse. A man in one cubicle slaps his own desk with a palm and stands. He does not shout. His motion is sharp. The light above his cubicle changes to the other color. The person across from him does not react with fear. The person across from him writes something on a thin tablet and slides it across the desk. The standing man sits, takes the tablet, and begins to read. His lips move. He nods several times without looseness in his neck. The light above the cubicle fades to the first color again. You want me to bless this, I say. You want me to state that this is a valid containment for harm and a valid prompt for change. I want you to watch the parts that do not work, he says, and I want you to explain why they do not work without using a story that flatters you. If you flatter yourself, you start performing. Performing ruins your judgment. You are not on trial here. I am. In a far cubicle, a woman writes with intensity. The sheet does not end. She writes, and the sheet accepts the ink without ending. The person across from her sits with hands folded and watches her with the same patience I learned in my second year of practice, when a man needed to itemize every insult he had suffered in an hour to build trust that I would not interrupt. The woman writes until her hand slows. The light above her cubicle turns to the second color. The sheet curls back toward her like a ribbon, except it is not a ribbon. It folds and stacks itself on the desk in a precise rectangle. She presses one hand on it. She closes her eyes without strain. She opens them and nods. The person across from her slides a small box across the desk. She opens it. It is empty. She looks at the person. The person nods toward the box. The woman puts the rectangle of paper in the box. The box closes by itself. The light turns to the first color again. I do not know what I am looking at, and I do not pretend to know. I ask what the box does. He answers without ornament. It stores the story where it can be read without letting it rule the reader, he says. There are rooms where a person must carry the box at all times. There are rooms where the box is nailed to the table. There are rooms where the box is taken away for a week. None of those rooms are simple. I want you to see something else now. He leads me out to the corridor and to a door that reads, Audits, my shoulders set in a certain way when I see that word. He notices. He does not comment. He opens the door. The room is smaller. A table stands in the center, and on the table is a ledger bound in heavy covers. The pages are thin without being delicate. There is a pen at the top of the page with no clip and no brand. I step closer and read a line. The line is a case summary. The case belongs to a man who ran a business and did not pay the workers who could not complain without losing their housing. The summary does not use adjectives. It lists dates and amounts and statements made and signatures refused. It lists small acts of kindness the man offered once a year to assuage himself. It lists those acts as footnotes rather than headlines. The last column on the line reads, Assignment, and the entry is a set of coordinates that do not belong to any map I know. Read the next, he says. I do. It is a woman with 3 children who lied on a form to get into a school that would keep her oldest son out of a gang. The ledger lists the lie. The ledger also lists the list of forms and offices that refused her when she asked for help with the truth. It lists a counselor who meant well but forgot to call back. It lists a neighbor who offered cash at a rate that would end in eviction within 6 months. The assignment column lists a different set of coordinates and the word companion, yes. Who writes these, I ask. No one, he says. Everyone. The ledger writes itself. It takes the facts and sets them in order with no author to please. I maintain the room. I make sure no one slips a note into it with a false date. You think that would be rare? It is not rare. The living are inventive when they plan to die and leave someone else holding the bag. That is what most hauntings are. Not chains, not fires. Paperwork that someone hid under a floorboard of the world. He turns the page to a blank line and slides the pen toward me. The pen is not warm. It is not cold. Write, he says. Write what you see in me, not the costume, not the job, the person. If you write nonsense, the ink will not stick. If you write theatrics, the ink will collect in a shape and run off the page. If you write a sentence you can defend in a room of sober people who know what hurt feels like, the ink will stay. I do not reach for the pen. I think for a full count of 20. I have written notes in emergency rooms at 3 a.m. with security outside the curtain and a family in the hall demanding answers I did not have. I have written statements for judges who wanted simple categories where there were none. I have written apology letters to patients I misread when I was tired. I pick up the pen and write one sentence. I write, Subject presents as a function assigned to constrain harm and accelerate insight, reporting fatigue and requesting evaluation of fitness for duty. The ink sits on the page and does not run. He nods. That is the start, he says. Now the hard part. Either you help me run the floor for 1 hour so you can speak from more than observation, or you base your opinion on a tour. I will not accept a tourist's note. I do not agree at once. I do not say no at once. I ask what running the floor involves. He answers. I would sit in a cubicle. I would look at the ledger page for each person who sits across from me. I would read the summary. I would read the column labeled Agreements. That column lists vows the person made to himself or to others. Some were kept, some were not. I would match the assignments to the vows. I would also be required to use a stamp. The stamp does not issue a sentence. The stamp says ready or not ready. The stamp is not cosmetically serious. The stamp changes time. The stamp moves a person from one level of feedback to another. He will take responsibility for my errors. I will take responsibility for my part in them. If I refuse, he will accept my refusal without drama, and I will lose the right to sign his evaluation. I have sat with men who wanted to sign divorce papers on my desk. I refused and referred them to a lawyer. I have sat with teenagers who wanted me to call their parents during the hour and announce the secret crushes they confessed. I refused and taught them to speak for themselves. I have also sat with women in parking lots who needed me to walk them back inside because the lobby felt like a cliff edge. I did not refuse that. I ask myself what I am doing here. I ask whether I am about to satisfy curiosity instead of a clinical obligation. The answer is not pretty. I choose the work anyway because the patient in this room asked me to evaluate a system, and a tour is not enough to do that. I will run the floor for 1 hour, I say. No more. Time will not obey the face of your watch, he says. You will experience an hour. Your body will not be damaged. Your mind will not be edited. Your beliefs will not be changed. Your illusions will be corrected as far as the work demands. You will stamp ready or not ready when you must. If you refuse to stamp anything, that refusal will be recorded as your decision, and people will wait because of it. He does not guide me by the arm. He leads me back to triage and opens a side door into a short hall with small rooms on either side. He opens the nearest door and gestures me in. The room is a cubicle like the ones behind glass, except here I can hear. The desk is smooth. The chair fits my back without pressure. The opposite chair is empty. The light above the cubicle shows the third color. A small rectangle sits on the desk. It is the stamp. I lift it. The handle is wood. The base is rubber. The rubber is clean. 2 stamp pads sit side by side. I press the stamp on each pad to feel the give. I set it down. A door on the other side of the cubicle opens. A man steps in and sits across from me. He is 50. He wears a plain t-shirt and trousers with knees that show a history of kneeling. His hands are large with clean nails. He looks at my face as if I am a mirror he has to face before he can move past. He does not say hello. A sheet slides up from the desk surface with his ledger summary and the agreements column. The agreements are simple. He promised to tell the truth when he sold used trucks. He promised to maintain the brakes he replaced. He promised not to put off repairs that could hurt someone. He broke those promises when the market shifted and his margin narrowed. He did not kill anyone. He cost people money and time and stress they could not afford. He moved to a new state when too many customers complained. He started over with the same promises and new ways to avoid them. I told myself the roads were straight and flat, and the county salted in winter, he says. His voice carries no accent I can place. I told myself my kids needed school clothes, and those men were just going to load the bed with drywall anyway. I told myself if a truck stopped, it would be on the shoulder and the driver would call a tow. It was a story. I knew it was a story. I told it long enough that it felt true. I am not asking you to tell me I am good. I do not know what I am asking. What did you leave out of the story? I ask. He blinks. He waits. He answers. He left out the man who worked nights and slept in his truck in the lot between shifts because he had no apartment yet. He left out the mother who did not buckle in her child seat because she was moving the truck 3 spaces, and then the power steering failed in a turn, and she had no arm strength for that weight. He left out the way the trucks he sold came back with small shakes in the steering wheel at 50 miles an hour that no one could pin down until a ball joint snapped. He left out the way he stopped reading recall notices. He left out the way he had to drink 2 whiskeys to talk himself into sleeping. He left out the day his own kid asked him why the brakes on the family car always worked. "Are you ready?" I ask, "to be placed where you cannot use a story for a while?" He nods. He does not ask what while means. The stamp rests in my hand before I think about it. "Ready," I stamp. The desk accepts the imprint, and the light above the cubicle shifts. The man looks both relieved and alert. Relief without softness. Alert without panic. He stands. He leaves. The sheet slides back into the desk and becomes the desk. The second person is a boy who died 3 days after a punch thrown at a party hit him under the ear. The summary lists no malice. The summary lists a chain of small choices that begin with a dare, a drink, a failure to text a ride, a driveway with poor light, a backyard with a pool surrounded by concrete. He sits with knees apart and hands between them. He is more scared for his mother than for himself. He says so. He is worried she will make a shrine and forget his sister is alive. He is worried his father will hate the boy who threw the punch and waste what years he has left. He does not ask about heaven. He asks where he should wait so he does not make more trouble. I stamp ready, and the light above us cools, and a woman steps in and touches his shoulder and guides him out. Companion assignment. The desk writes it as I watch. The third person is a priest who used his voice to stop a complaint. The ledger lists dates and meetings and the tone he used when the parents came back a second time. The ledger lists one boy who stopped singing and stopped eating, then broke his jaw in a fall from a ladder in the church storage room. The priest sits very straight and folds his hands as if folding them will hold him together. He does not ask me to absolve him. He asks me to order him to a room where he cannot speak for a year. He cries without tears. He uses a paper napkin from his pocket that has a cafe logo on it and places it in the trash basket without stuffing it down. I want to stamp ready and I want to stamp not ready, and both wants are wrong. I read the agreements column. He made vows. He broke them to protect the organization first. I stamp not ready, and the desk writes room, witnessing, voice lock. The door opens. A man with a maintenance belt gestures him forward. The priest nods and stands. He leaves without looking at me. I stamp through stories that do not fit a pattern and stories that do. I stamp a nurse who took samples from a trial and sold them to a clinic that promised a cure to people who did not understand what trial meant. I stamp a father who forgave a drunk driver and then used the forgiveness as a proof of goodness to angle for promotion at his church. I stamp a coder who inserted a small line in a billing system that rounded cents up to him when users renewed subscriptions at midnight. The coder says it was a joke. The ledger lists his emails. The ledger lists the spreadsheet where he tracked the totals in a folder named Vacation. Ready, not ready, ready. The stamp thuds, the light changes, the door opens, the door closes, the desk absorbs the sheets. At some point, a small metal cup appears on the desk with clear water. I drink twice. It tastes like tap water in a hotel in a city that cleans its water to the letter of the code. The patient who built this place stands outside the cubicle and watches me through the half-open door for a minute. He does not interfere. When he leaves, the air smooths again. The hour does not move on my watch. The hour moves in my spine and hands. I do not feel fatigue. I see it on my notes. My handwriting opens and closes. The letters pull closer together. The lines stack with less margin. I adjust my posture. I force myself to write each stamped decision with a reason. I do not allow myself to trust hunches without words. When the hour ends, I do not hear a bell. I feel the end in the change in the air pressure in the cubicle. The light above the stamp goes out. The stamp loses weight. It is a block of rubber and wood again. He stands in the doorway with the look of a man watching a surgeon tie off a last knot. He nods me out into the hall. He does not praise. He does not scold. He leads me back to audits. He places the ledger on the table and opens it to the page where I wrote my first sentence. He gestures to the space below. "Write your conclusion," he says. I hold the pen and feel the room. I resist the urge to summarize with clean words that sound good. I write what I would write if a judge and a family and a staff of night nurses had to act on my note. I write, "System observed functions as a mirror-based corrective environment with structured containment and feedback loops. Interventions rely on accurate record of acts and stated vows. Observed risks, operator fatigue, drift toward routine, blind spots causing secondary harm. Observed strengths, absence of spectacle, insistence on responsibility, flexibility of time to match insight rather than emotional display. Recommendation: operator may be fit for duty with conditions. Must institute co-supervision, scheduled audits, rest rotations, and external review. Personal note: the work prevents harm by cutting stories away from excuses. It will fail if the operator starts to like it. The ink stays. The page dries. He looks at the lines and does not react. He closes the ledger. He rests his hand on the cover and keeps it there for 1 second. His eyes flick to mine. "That last sentence is the only one that is not professional," he says. "It is also the only sentence that matters to me." We return to my office by walking through the door we first used. The aquarium wheel begins to move again. The ceiling hum resumes its thin buzz. The snowflake on the window falls the last half of the glass and disappears at the frame. The analog clock jumps forward 5 minutes and then resumes normal movement. My tea is cold. My phone has a calendar notification. Tomorrow's sessions start at 8. I check the panic button. It clicks once when I press it. The light under the lip flashes green and returns to steady. He sits back in the client chair and crosses one ankle over the other. He rests his hands on the armrests again. He is calm. The silence that follows is not empty. It is ordinary. I breathe and hear air move in my throat again. I am grateful for the sound without showing it. I look at the legal pad. The words I wrote in the ledger are not here. The line I wrote about him is. The rest of the page is blank. I write a clinical note in my pad in my usual format because my habits are my anchor. I write, intake note. Patient identifies as the devil. Mood, stable. Affect, constrained. Thought content. Identity claim with supporting data beyond normal verification. Insight, high. Judgment, procedural. Risk, none to self or others in office. Plan, boundaries. Weekly sessions. Collateral observation of reported system. Discuss fatigue and co-supervision. Discuss harm drift. I sign my name and the time. I slide the pad away and fold my hands where he can see them. You asked for evaluation of fitness for duty, I say. My conclusion is conditional. Your system works when it resists spectacle. It fails when you start to believe the work needs you to be cruel to function. You said you are tired. That is not a sin. That is a limit. You need rest rotations and audits that you cannot veto. You need a place to put your hands when you do not want to stamp. He lowers his eyes. He thinks. He looks back up. You want a board, he says. A review committee. You want me to allow in other minds that do not answer to me. I want you to be accountable to something you do not control, because that is how any power stays honest, I say. Even if you are what you say you are not safe from your own efficiency. No one is. He laughs once. It is not a show laugh. It is small and relieved. Do you want the job? He asks. People are careful around you because you do not give them what they want to hear when they want it. That is useful. You would hate it after a month. No, I say. I want to go home, eat a reheated dinner, and complain about traffic while I chop peppers for the weekend omelet. I want to grade my resident's case presentation. I want to wake up at 4 and remember your face and hate that I remember it, and still show up next week on time to do my job. That is the limit I accept. I will not run your floor. I will see you. I will speak plainly. I will not flatter you. That is what I can offer. He stands. He buttons his coat. He places a folded bill on the coaster without touching my tea. It is a bill I have not seen before. It has no numbers on it. It has a serial of symbols that are not letters. He watches me watch it. Your receptionist takes cards, he says. This covers the time you spent off book. You do not owe me a receipt. You owe me your honesty. We will meet again, set the time. I will keep it. I do not pick up the bill. I do not throw it away. I open the scheduling app and make a weekly slot at the end of Wednesdays. I say the time out loud. He nods. He thanks me without words. He opens the door. The hall is empty and fluorescent. The pane of glass in the waiting room reflects his shape and does not distort it. He walks out the main door without reaching for the handle. The door opens and closes at the correct speed. I sit for 1 minute and count the steps of closing an office. I text my wife that I'm on the way. I wipe down the desk. I feed the fish and watch the orange bodies move steady in the current. I unplug the kettle. I pick up the bill and place it in a manila envelope marked MESC. I lock the suite door. I test the handle. Secure. In the elevator, the floor counter shows floors I know. Lobby, parking, mezzanine. The elevator stops at lobby. The doors open. The security guard sits at his station and raises a hand. He asks if I saw the power flicker an hour ago. I say yes and ask if all is well. He says the generator tested itself. He says the alarm panel logged a door opening on a floor that does not exist in our building. He says he cleared the fault. He smiles because it is a building joke now. I sign the log. I step into the night air that smells of clean snow and old leaves. The parking lot is ordinary. The lamps stand and glow. The asphalt has a black patch where a truck leaked oil last month. My car hood has a fine layer of slush on it that the wipers clear with 2 passes. I sit in the driver's seat and check the mirror. My face looks older. It is not a metaphor. There is a crease at the corner of my mouth that was not there this morning. My hairline is the same. My eyes are alert. I drive out with the radio off. At the first red light, I notice a small tag attached to the steel pole at eye height. It is a rectangular sticker with tiny print. The print lists the number of seconds the light has been ignored by drivers making right turns without stopping. It lists the number of cyclists near misses in the past year. It lists an old city ordinance that is not enforced anymore because the department is short-staffed and priorities shifted. The sticker has no logo. The sticker keeps a score no one asked for. I do not pull the sticker off. I rut it. I nod to it. The light turns green. I go. At home, the apartment is warm and smells of roasted carrots. My wife is on the sofa under a blanket, with a crime novel open on her knees. She looks up. She studies my face without words for 3 seconds and closes the book. She asks me if I'm hungry. I am. She heats pasta. We eat at the counter. I talk about a resident who used the word borderline as an insult in a chart, and how I plan to correct him without humiliating him. She listens. She tells me about a woman at her work who returned from leave and cried in the stairwell because her desk had been moved. My son is asleep already. I go into his room and fix his blanket. He murmurs and rolls over. When the house is quiet, I take the manila envelope marked MSC from my bag and remove the bill he placed on my coaster. It is still a bill without numbers. I hold it to the light. The paper holds a watermark that is not a picture. It is a pattern of small boxes, some filled, some empty, arranged in rows and columns. It looks like a spreadsheet printed on skin. I put it back in the envelope and file it in the safe behind the books. I tell myself I do this to keep private things private. That is true. Another truth sits beside it. I do not want the bill to lie in the open, where I will see it every morning when I hunt for a highlighter. I do not want my day to start with a symbol I cannot measure. I sleep and wake before dawn. I shower. I stand in the steam and think about the stamp in my hand that did not weigh the same after the hour ended. I wonder whether my hand made up that difference to comfort itself. I turn off the water and step onto the mat. I dry my feet. My body does not tremble. My mind does not break into prayer. I am a clinician. I do not have the taste for prayer in words. I make coffee and slice peppers and onion. I hear the clatter of the cutting board in an ordinary kitchen in an ordinary apartment. I am grateful for the sound. At the hospital, I attend morning report. I listen to a case of a man brought in by police on a Friday night after he shouted scripture in the middle of a gas station and used the nozzle as a microphone. The intern wants to change the antipsychotic immediately. I tell him to ask the man about his sleep and his salt intake first, because the man works construction and has been cutting weight to make a boxing class. Salt and water do more for minds than pills when the cause is heat and lack. The intern looks confused and then writes notes. I make sure he writes the notes where he will find them later. By noon, I have already forgotten the smell of roasted carrots and the sticker on the stoplight, and I do not like that. I eat yogurt and almonds in my office with the blinds open. I read a voicemail from a lawyer who wants me to testify about a former patient who missed a drug court check-in. I schedule a call, then take it off my mind by writing the date down. In the quiet after the call, I notice a shape under my door. I stand and open it. A piece of paper lies on the carpet. It is not folded. It is a page from my own legal pad. It bears my handwriting. It reads, "The work will fail when he starts to enjoy it." The sentence I wrote in the ledger. The top edge of the paper shows the faint tear of a spiral. My legal pad on the desk still has all pages attached. I walk back to my desk and lift the pad. The sheet is missing. My chair scrapes 1 inch on the floor. I set it back without apology to the air. I stand very still and watch my door. I wait. I hear nothing in the hall. I sit and place the sheet in a file folder labeled Devil. The folder looks ridiculous. The word is straight. The ink is blue. I do it anyway. I turn on the white noise machine that keeps voices from the hall out of my room. The radiator ticks once. The hum of the ceiling remains steady. I pick up the next chart. I do not forget what the folder says. I work my afternoon. The week moves as weeks do when work fills it. Sessions blend together in a way that only matters to me. I correct the resident's tone. He accepts the correction well. I drive past the stoplight and the sticker is still there, but a small corner has peeled. On Saturday, I attend a public lecture on grief by a hospice nurse who wore bright socks and told the story of a man who could not let go of his dog's collar for months after the dog died. She said the collar helped him finish what his hands needed to do. She did not make him throw it out. She also did not let him bring it to group sessions because it made others freeze. Limits protect everyone. She said that twice. I wrote it down. On Wednesday, I arrive at the office early. I place a second chair in my room 2 feet behind my own and to the right. Supervisory position for a hypothetical observer. It is an old trick. It reminds me I am not the only judgment in the room. I do not explain this to anyone. The chair sits where it sits. I place the manila envelope in the bottom drawer and lock it. I unlock the outer door at 5 minutes to the hour and straighten the magazines in the waiting room, because straight lines help my mind hold itself in place. At exactly 7, he opens the door and steps in. The same coat, the same shoes, the same quiet. He glances at the second chair and then at me. He smiles a small, private yes. He sits. I sit. We do not shake hands. I set the timer. It starts and vibrates once on my wrist in reassurance. I exhale. Not dramatic, just air. I say, "How was your week?" He looks past me at the empty chair and then back. "I introduced an audit team," he says. 3 members. I granted them independent access. I bound myself to accept their recommendations in areas where my logs show that I shortened steps for the sake of speed. This cost me nothing I should have kept. It cost me habits I developed during periods of high volume. I did not enjoy the change. That may be a sign that it was necessary. "How did the team respond to your fatigue?" I ask. He looks down. He opens his hands, palms up on the armrests. One of them suggested a transfer of certain intake duties to a subset of companions trained for early-stage containment, he says. One of them suggested I spend 1 hour a day in a room where no one can ask me for anything. One of them asked me to tell the truth about why I do this. I told him the truth. The truth is that the work interests me. Interest is dangerous at my scale. I worked alone for too long. We talk about the shape of interest and the way it can turn into ownership without a man noticing. We talk about the moments during the hour last week when I wanted to stamp ready because I was tired, and not because the person was ready. He listens without interrupting and without defending. He asks a question that is not rhetorical. He asks me to describe the feeling in my hands when I stamped "not ready" for the priest. I tell him my hands were steady and my thoughts were not. I tell him steady hands do not absolve a man. He accepts this and notes something down on a small card he produces from his coat. The card looks blank until he sets his pen on it. Then the text appears. At the half hour, something changes in the air. It is small. The window shows a shadow that does not belong to a tree or a person. He notices it and stops speaking. He looks to the glass and his face goes still. He stands. He walks to the window and places his hand on the glass. He rests it there. The shadow departs. He returns to the chair and speaks only when he is seated. "You asked me to be accountable to something I do not control," he says. "Something came to test whether I would call on old methods. I did not. I did what the audit requires." I paused. I waited. I allowed the situation to resolve without inserting my will. It resolved. This is a skill I once had and then stopped using. Skill maintenance is work, I say. You know this. The world rewards shortcuts until it does not. Then it calls the shortcuts sins and demands penance. Neither phase is honest. Do the maintenance anyway. He nods. He looks at the secondary chair again. "The presence behind you helps," he says, "even when the chair is empty." We close the session by setting tasks. He will build rest rotations. He will close 2 rooms known for producing spectacle and replace them with rooms where people can sit without performing. He will permit the audit to publish summaries to a place I cannot read, but that he cannot edit. I will decide whether I can write a formal report that does not end my career. I will decide whether I can carry this without breaking other parts of my life. We set the next session. He leaves the envelope again. This time it contains a small card with a coordinate set, and on the back, the words, "This is the room where men who nearly saved a life sit when they arrive. I do not ask for a tour." I pocket the card and lock the drawer. Weeks pass. The work does not become normal. It becomes structured. I attend meetings that do not exist on calendars, where a nurse from a burned-out hospice unit tells me that the room she visited for a day asked her to sleep. Sleep cured a rage she called holiness in her journals. I meet a coder who asks to undo his own efficiency gains by writing a function that adds delays back into a system that stripped them away. I meet a mother who refuses to put her son in a room marked punishment because she knows the word will turn him into something he is not. She asks for witnessing instead. I stamp ready for her request. I keep my own life simple. I do not drink more coffee. I do not run more miles. I leave the living room lights on when I sleep on the sofa after a late session, because the dark feels unearned after what I have seen. My wife watches me without fear and asks me once whether I am in danger. I tell her no, and that is true. I tell her I am tired. That is also true. She does not press. She makes French toast on Sunday, and we eat it with our son, while he tells us about a dream that involved a dragon and a dentist. We laugh in a way that keeps space for the memory. On a Wednesday in late winter, I arrive to find a woman sitting in the corridor outside my office with a file folder on her lap. She stands when she sees me and asks if she can speak to the administrator of the thing beneath the building. She uses those words, exactly. She says her mother died in January and she cannot stop cleaning the house as if her mother will return. She says she knows there is a room for that. I tell her I cannot provide directions. I tell her I can help her sit in my office and breathe air and make a plan that includes 2 phone calls and a boxed meal delivered to her father's door. She nods. She cries without tearing. She thanks me for the plan and does the first call in my presence because she is more likely to do it if I witness it. I sit with her while the phone rings. That ring is the only sound I hear. It is enough. That night, he arrives late. I say nothing. He looks tired and does not hide it. He says the audits uncovered a room that had drifted into routine. It was a room where men who enjoyed punishment volunteered to oversee those who had made public mistakes. He closed the room. He reassigned the overseers to a place where they had to ask for water from the men they used to supervise. He says the men did not stop asking for the old room. He says he still hears the echo. He asks me to repeat the sentence I wrote in the ledger about enjoyment. I do, and I add another. When a room starts to make sense to the person who runs it, that person needs a new room. He repeats it. He writes it on the card. The ink takes. In March, a news story appears about a small county office that found 3,000 unopened benefit applications in a closet. The county claims it was a clerical error. The article quotes a clerk who says he told his supervisor about the closet 3 times. I cut the article and put it in the folder. I do not write a comment. The pattern is clear and the ledger does not need my captions. That night he attends his appointment on time. We sit. I tell him about the clerk and the closet. He listens and notes the dates. He says an audit team already flagged a room with a similar drift and shut it down that morning. He does not claim credit. He says only that the mirrors are catching up. I bring a printed report in a sealed envelope. It contains the conclusion I wrote in the ledger and the conditions attached to it. I tell him I will keep no other copy and will not send it to anyone who would turn it into spectacle. He accepts the envelope and places it in his coat without looking inside. He offers, one more time, a permanent role. I refuse one more time and say I will remain a consultant with a schedule, boundaries, and audits he cannot edit. He agrees. He repeats the terms back to me in plain language. We shake hands for 1 second. Before he leaves, I read the sentence taped inside my desk drawer. When a room starts to make sense to the person who runs it, that person needs a new room. He nods at the drawer without asking to see the paper. I lock the folder, power down the aquarium light, test the panic button, and set the chair behind mine 2 feet to the right for the next session. I leave the office exactly as I found it, with nothing strange left on the surface of the desk. In the lobby, the guard asks if the phantom floor reappeared on the panel. I say no. He laughs and says the joke is getting old. I sign the log and walk out into an ordinary night. At the same red light, the sticker is half peeled. A city worker has added a fresh tag with a hotline number for near misses. I stop fully, count, and turn. No ceremony, just the rule. At home, I file the county article behind the safe's door and close it. I do not open the envelope with the numberless bill. I do not need to see it to remember what it means. I set the next week's session and the one after that. The calendar holds both. I will keep showing up with the stamp in my head and the chair behind me, even when the chair is empty. He will keep his audits. The mirrors will keep working. That is the arrangement. That is enough.